The cameras were filming. A soft tune was being played. Furthermore, the dinner table seemed to be in harmony. According to AA Lovely's secret that shattered the silence, what started off as friendly banter and glass-clinking Beckham, an unthinkable night of chaos when Days and Sierra got into a fight over rumors of a pregnancy. Unexpected storm. Witnesses reported that the tension was so high that a knife could pierce it. Fans, insiders, and everybody else other people are asking the same thing. What specifically did Yandy say that caused Mendeecees to stop talking and Sierra to start crying? The narrative claims that this was not just a thoughtless comment, but rather a well-timed bombshell that disclosed something. Secret meetings, unspoken ties, and possibly a pregnancy scandal that may destroy friendships and marriages. From Sierra's angry response to Menda's sudden immobility, at every stage of this discovery, viewers have been split and in a state of shock. Was it too lengthy? Path to admission or a conscious effort to break up a relationship between two people who are already having problems. Prepare yourself for the more you think about this scenario, the worse it gets. A few inside giggles, smiles, and what seemed two sincere efforts were made to keep the goodwill going as the evening got underway. But behind the smiles were years of tension that remains unresolved. Yandy had been silent for most of the evening, watching, listening, letting the conversations float around her like mist. But her friends were able to recognize that something was upon. She appeared to be waiting for the right moment to speak, rather than speaking out loud because of the burden on her mind. Her gaze, when the laughter crested and the energy seemed light, she leaned in and continued talking loudly enough to be heard across the den. According to insiders, it wasn't only what she stated, but also the way she said those words. Calm, collected, and self-assured, as if she had expected this for a long time. Sierra and the others needed to know about something that could no longer be kept a secret. He continued immediately. The mood shifted. Sierra's smile. Met laugh stopped. The room seemed to be closing as Mendeecees glanced anxiously dotted in on them. After watching the film, viewers reported feeling the tension as the guests uneasily looked at each other. Yandy's next statement was shocking. There were speculations of a pregnancy that were closely linked. To Mendeecees would pull Sierra into a scandal for which she was unprepared. Everywhere there were gasps dot the room. The standstill made every second appear to go on forever as some people clung to their drinks and with her cheeks flushed with surprise. Sierra immediately pushed back her chair as they whispered to each other, What precisely are you discussing?" Fans immediately pointed as she wept. Her voice alternating between fear and wrath found that Menda's silence was unusual. Normally a quick explanation is provided or an explanation he fell silent. This time Mendeecees sat down. He was motionless, his palm resting on the edge of the table. He hesitated before rejecting or clarifying, and that in itself raised inquiries over the situation. Persistent. There had been suspicions and murmurs for weeks that someone close to them was hiding something significant. And as evidence started to emerge, I could no longer hide it. Yandy explained without doubt that their private chats, private emails, and enough evidence made the narrative inevitable. Her look flaming, Sierra turned to Mendeecees and slammed her hand into the table, demanding that he speak with a worried, almost pleading tone. She added, "Tell her she's lying," knowing that remaining silent was a secret. I said, "Tell me right now this isn't true. It's a sign of guilt." Everyone was shocked by how quickly the drama developed. Some moved from friendly banter to open chaos, while others leaned closer, desperate, while others made an effort to defuse the conflict so they wouldn't miss anything. Lastly, threats. "It's not what it sounds like," he murmured, opening his mouth. But nothing he said helped, whispered in a low, unconvincing voice. And it was only 7 words that started the fire. Sierra's voice, "Either it is or it is not." "Is it not as it sounds?" she asked, rising as tears filled her eyes. "Can you hear what you're saying?" "Not at all." Witnesses who were supporters described the occurrence as one of the most awful things they had ever seen. Lengthy period of time. Although Yandy's face remained calm and even icy, as if she had been, Sierra's anguish was clear and unadulterated. Emotions were running strong, and she was prepared for this exact reaction. The conversation veered off course with accusations flying across the table like daggers. Sierra questioned Menda's loyalty, saying he had betrayed not just her trust, but their relationship as a whole. Honesty. Even the ability to look her in the eyes without recoiling every word was filled with anguish and disbelief. Yandy, however, was not going to give up and reiterated her belief that the truth will eventually come to light and that it was better to have it. disclosed right away rather than allow it to fester in secret. She'd discuss it in treaty, accountability, and accepting the consequences in spite of their unpleasantness. The room was now compiled a list split. Some accused Yandy of making the wrong choice, while others applauded her and said she was right to come clean. Time and place for discussing such personal matters. Initially meant to be a symbol of solidarity, the meal had evolved into a battlefield. Is it accurate? Sierra said to Mendeecees again, her voice breaking. Her inquiry was quite sincere. This was about more than just gossip. It was about her life being torn apart in public. Nothing could disturb the silence, and Mendeecees lowered it, unable to look her in the eye via denial. The weight of that silence made Sierra's cheeks quiver, and she sprung to her feet as gasps echoed. Her chair rattled on the floor, and she waved her shaking palms at him. You made me seem silly. I'm in front of everyone. You let me sit here and grin while knowing this was going to happen. The crashing thud of the door echoed like the final flourish of a play, and she hurried away from a table, tears running down her cheeks despite the companion's cries for her to calm down. But the tension remained long after she had departed, and the room was filled with speculation as everyone chatted quickly in an effort to piece what they had just witnessed together. Some leaned on Yandy seeking further information while others looked at her. Mendeecees waiting for him to explain. His face covered by Hishans and whispered something that no one could hear. The cameras recorded every second, and viewers would play a back dot online, scrutinizing every gesture, facial expression, and flicker of remorse or shame. The incident involving Yandy's remarks, their undeniable impact, and Sarah's loss of composure was one of the most unforgettable events in recent memory. For many onlookers, the way the finding was portrayed was just as significant as the discovery itself. Even if the destruction had just begun, the destruction was evident. Relationships had been strained, trust had been betrayed, and the audience was left wondering how anyone could move on after a night that exposed such painful fundamental facts. It was clear that the audience was witnessing pure, terrible feeling rather than a storyline. However, sorted that Sierra's suffering was too real to be dismissed as humor, and that this was just another instance in turbulent world of reality TV drama. Sierra hurried out of the room. The astonishment permeated the air, and many others shuffled in their seats, mumbling, unsure whether to follow her or stay. Mendeecees kept his face pressed to his hands behind him, but Yandy remained stern and sat up straight. Thus, it's fair to infer that one of the visitors violated the excruciating pause, and just one question restored the tension. Mendeecees' eyes were burning with annoyance as he gently raised his head and continued. I didn't want it to come out like this. Instead of diffusing the made us all feel at home. Seemed foolish. Emotions clashed with every syllable as the dispute got out of hand. Her words prompted the room to grow silent, and it was clear that Mendeecees' eyes were shaking. But the quietness didn't endure for a long time when a new twist appeared. One of the companions hinted that there might be more to this story than "Are you being truthful with us?" Considering Yandy had already revealed, they asked sharply. The room exploded with surprise at the question. Immediately, Sierra's face became white as she turned to face Mendeecees. Is there anything else? She was adamant. He was obviously nervous. He opened his mouth, but at first nothing appeared. Everyone leaned in to wait. Finally, he sighed deeply. There's more, he said, and the room erupted in gasps. Even Yandy was taken aback, thinking she had told everything. More, she said, her eyebrows going up, wrinkled, furious. Sierra shook and banged her hands on the table. Now what are you not telling me? How many secrets will you share with me? How many more secrets will you reveal me? Mendeecees wiped his face with his hands, which were visibly torn. He stated, I am not permitted to say it. Not in public. That reaction simply made matters worse. Sierra sprang to her feet, her chair scraping the floor. You no longer have the authority to determine what she said firmly. Hearing and what I don't. And if there was more, you would say it now in front of everyone. Urged him to speak the truth. The situation had grown out of control, and bystanders were now on the verge off their chairs. Once again, social media went viral, and rumors began to mow faster than previously. What else could he be hiding? A fan wrote a comment on someone else once said, "This is the most crazy plot we've ever seen." Sierra will remember that you'll never be free if she doesn't pursue this. Yandy would recline with her arms and start the conversation. Even she now seemed to fold as if she realized that divulging one truth would have revealed a mountain of others. Nervous, the crowd was left expecting explanations, and everyone was shocked by the news. The night's unresolved conclusion, Sierra left again without speaking to the Mendeecees. Yet he seemed to be a man who the atmosphere intensified as he tried not to fully set down a load that was too big for him. Tension rose as feelings grew stronger. What was the secret he kept? And if it were ever made public, would everything be irreparably ruined? The concern continued for the following 3 days like a stationary storm cloud anywhere. Sierra Solance then murmurs, and the pitying look she got just made her more irate. Acquired from acquaintances, friends, and distant family members who appeared to know something. She couldn't escape the questions. What more was Mendeecees hiding? Why wouldn't he come clean now that he's been exposed? Mendeecees, on the other hand, was a man in decline after being revealed. His attempts, he tried calling and texting Sierra, but she never answered, and it felt like the walls were closing in on him. In on him as the pressure from his family, admirers, and own regret increased. He confided in a buddy one night, his voice raspy with exhaustion. "I don't know how to proceed. I'll lose everything if I reveal. Furthermore, I would still miss our upcoming meeting if I kept it." Which neither Sierra nor Wen, their mutual friends, made them go, even though neither Mendeecees nor theirs wanted to. It was the decisive moment. Point. The atmosphere was oppressive. Sierra arrived first, her hands shaking. Mendeecees arrived in a moment, but her face was a steel mask that exposed the tempest inside. Later, even Yandy, who initiated this whole thing, sagged over as if you were carrying the entire globe. Conflation sat quietly in the corner of the table. Her eyes, she seemed uncomfortable with how things had progressed and was alert and focused. "It was unbearable until you mentioned more," Sierra replied coldly, forcing him to speak at last. "Everything. Say it now." Put an end to Mendeecees paused, and the entire room turned to see him as he spoke in half-truths. He tightened his throat and spoke slowly at first, acknowledging that it wasn't just about Tit was about protecting someone else, but it was also about defending myself. The statement shocked the gathering, and Sierra moved forward and made a solid statement. "Who? For whom did you defend yourself?" His eyes briefly traveled to Yandy, which was enough to light a fire. Sierra's face twisted in shock and bewilderment as she screamed. "Don't you dare tell me she's part of this," she said, pointing to Yandy. Yandy's mouth grew tighter without making her flinch. "Don't twist this," Shri shot back, startled. "I confessed the truth because it was hurting me. If I had planned to keep protecting him, I wouldn't have spoken a word." Sierra stood up and nearly toppled her chair. "So you two lied to me?" Mendeecees held up his hands in despair. "But I wasn't the one who sat there like a fool and kept this a secret. Wanted to keep the past from destroying the future, because I knew that mistakes and unanticipated outcomes with things would destroy us." The room erupted in shouts as everyone tried to make out what he was saying. Others demanded an explanation, but Sierra's shaky voice pleaded with him to stop avoiding the truth. "Just shout it," slicing through the clamor with anger. "To what fault? Are you alluding?" His voice was shaky as he said. "I wasn't faithful. It wasn't only anybody. It was a close family member." The sound of the words was like thunder. The air in the room fell with a revelation, and Sierra staggered back when he finally screamed them out. Her face would have turned white and her chest would have heaved if she had been struck. With an almost disbelieving tone, she reiterated who. Yandy shook her. The atmosphere was awful, with everyone's eyes flitting between Sierra and Yandy right away. "I would never do that. He, not me, has a secret." "Don't look at me." But damage was been done, and Sierra's mind raced through the more horrifying scenarios in contrast to the last one. Her sister, a friend, or a member of their social network, she yelled, and the vagueness almost made it worse than a name. "Find her, you disgusting. I have always loved, trusted, and stood up for you. What were you hiding?" She spat out. "Don't touch me. After Mendeecees grabbed her this, you're not permitted to console me." Anarchy erupted as voice Aver left, with some criticizing Mendeecees and others trying to console Sierra. "You had every look at the mess you made now," said a friend before it blew up like way. "You had the opportunity to tell her the truth." Later, admirers scrutinized this moment, pointing out every emotion in the room. Some expressed gratitude to Yandy for refusing to back down, and some accused her of being more culpable than she admitted. As conspiracy ideas increased, they eventually portrayed the betrayal in ever more spectacular ways. She was captured on tape, sobbing as she exited the gathering, and her friends rushed to her side. Mendeecees continued to doze off in his chair while shouting, "I can't believe I ever thought he was different," and shaking her head. "I've lost her," he said to himself as he turned to face the dejected faces that stared back at him from the chair. The story continued despite rumors that the betrayal was more than just basic infidelity. Layers, complexities, and people protecting their own secrets in Yandy are that she had told the truth, which she knew, but her supporters didn't believe her. An admirer commented, "She is more knowledgeable and her silence speaks for itself." The repercussions were dire. Sierra cut off all connection and barred Mendeecees from her. She had a phone, social media accounts, and was mostly reliant on her family who vowed to protect her from more hardship. Nevertheless, Mendeecees faced harsh online criticism. His reputation plummeted and his name was dragged through the mud because they didn't want to be associated with the problem. Even if his most loyal supporters began to drift away, the crucial question remained. Who had he betrayed Sierra to? For weeks following the first shock, the mystery remained. Sierra's grief, Mendeecees' death, Yandy's role in making everything public left them with permanent wounds and made their story one of the most talked about in their community. Time to heal. The family was divided, the friendships were strained, and that, after all, trust was permanently damaged and nobody emerged unscathed. Lost the man she thought was a friend. Yandy's credibility as a trustworthy confidant suffered and subsequently deceased. The fragments were everywhere. The damage was complete and he lost the life he had made and the future was unclear. It is clear from everything that happened that this drama has left nothing in its wake. Separate from tense interpersonal connections, unsolved problems, and an uncomfortable inner turmoil, fans were left wondering who to trust. Sierra ran away with her heart broken, and Mendeecees became caught up in a web he made. But the biggest mystery still stands. Who is the victim of his betrayal? Was Yandy someone Sierra actually knew well? Or is there more to the story than what was made public? Controversial topic. Did she disclose the truth because she was loyal to Sierra and ashamed? Or was there another reason than she realized? Each look, each pause, each silent statement is constantly analysts and fans have been speculating about it. Some believe Yandy was simply as surprised as the others. But some insist that she knows the full extent of the issue, but has chosen not to reveal anything. Moreover, it is still unclear if Sierra and Mendeecees' narrative is truly over and if forgiveness will be provided or does this ailment persist forever. Has Mendeecees' breakup with Grace been? Was his life irreparable in the eyes of his former fans, or was there any situation? Their comments enraged the table and some of the attendees gasped and shook. Yandy bowed their heads and one even referred to himself as a coward. Forward, as if to encourage him to continue. He didn't answer immediately, but his face and his silence told more. More than words could say. "So you acknowledge it?" she said in a calm but accusing tone. At that moment, Sierra's voice echoed across the room as she screamed, shouting at whoever was trying to comfort her. "Don't tell me. It's okay. Don't touch me. How long has he been lying to me?" Mendeecees found out every sentence will sting twice as much as it did previously. Those who observed and assessed this noticed the significant shift in Yandy's position. She was no longer just the individual who revealed the secret, was now acting as a judge and jury, compelling the Mendeecees to come clean. "How much time did you spend wanting to keep this a secret from her?" With a tough question, she became defensive. Mendeecees threw his fist into the table and yelled, "I was defending her!" Yandy did not back down. Shielding her took retribution. "How did you find out that she has a history of lying?" It is not an indication of protection to be aware of her most trusted man's covert activities behind her back. Rather, it is betrayal. Few guests tried to step in and defuse the tense situation, but the damage had already been done worse. "You should see her before it's too late." One of the buddies turned to Meanies and whispered, "Take care of things." But someone else interrupted you, asking, "What will he say?" The reality, she's already been ruined. Diddy. She's already been ruined. Sierra paced outdoors while holding her phone. As tears poured down her cheeks, she called a close relative. Her family members reacted with a mix of anger and disbelief, asking that she should have gotten more since he has been hiding something that has changed, and that she should have left immediately. Everything she trembled and muttered on the phone. She was shown by Yandy, "You won't believe what just happened." Preference for this particular moment by going back inside and paying attention to the other people seated there. She continued, "It is everyone's right to know what has been going on in this room. There are more problems than Sierra. It concerns the betrayal of confidence and how each of us was duped." The guests were incredulous. Some leaned closer to one another, discussing if Yandy was right to speak up or if she had gone too far. A companion whispered, even though it would destroy everything. She is courageous for saying this. They've already wrecked since she just ripped off the bandage. Finally, Mendeecees, with a loud scratching sound coming from his chair, he stood up. "Enough," he said, his voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You all believe you understand what's happening, but you don't have the whole picture." Immediately as he finished speaking, the entire audience became silent. He paused, glancing at the door where Sierra had disappeared, then turned to face Yandy again. "You're not aware of the amount of pressure I've been under." Yandy strained her eyes and spoke. "I did make some mistakes, but not everything you're saying is true." "Is some of it untrue?" The silence lingered on again, and she inquired forcefully. It was obvious that Mendeecees was struggling to think of a way to respond without asking more questions. His lack of self-defense ability shocked onlookers, and some wondered if he was hiding something much more important. But some said that his hesitation was more obvious than any denial. The door abruptly opened and Sierra returned with wide-open eyes and a "say it to my face." "Is it true?" she sobbed loudly. She disputed as he stood right across from Mendeecees. The audience held its breath as the table opened and closed. Sierra's knees buckled under the collective scream, and he said yes. Many years later, one of her friends rushed to catch her before she fell since it was hard to see the sadness in her eyes. Dubbed it the most agonizing moment of the night. But she wasn't finished. Gathering her courage, despite her tears and words, she spoke harshly as she pointed to the meanies and pushed away the comforting arms me like knives. "I will never be able to forgive you for making me look bad in front of the world and everyone. I'm sorry." But she snapped when Mendeecees went out to touch her. She said, "Don't touch me. The moment you decided to turn against me, you're all relinquished that privilege." Yandy shook her head, noting softly, "This is what happens when lies pile up." But that strongly. The truth always comes out. The visitors couldn't decide something, while others were unclear whether to feel sorry for Sierra or wonder what would happen next. Others encouraged her to go and never look again back. Others contended that there might be more undiscovered. Details in the narrative just served to fuel the gossip. The argument echoed throughout the night. Throughout the house, friends began debating loudly, with some taking sides and others declaring that the issue was settled. Of control, conjectures about who else knew how long this lasted and what dominated. Every conversation about what might happen next on social media, reactions are already happening in real time. Videos of the dinner went viral. Flooded in. And in a matter of minutes, Yandy was praised by some of the hashtags that went crazy. Despite the fact that some individuals criticized her for going clean in such a public and degrading way, it was clear that everyone was engrossed in the story. And after a while, Sierra and a close friend got into a car and drove off residence. Perhaps to control the emotional outburst that threatened to overtake her. The cameras recorded her. She wept quietly in the back seat. While pressing her palm on the window, the consequences were only beginning. Mendeecees sat by himself in the corner, his head sagging. Meanwhile, Yandy continued to defend her decision, challenging those who felt she had overreached herself. She stressed she was accountable for the truth. "You're not a liar," to a loved one. The night ended with a rush of emotions that turned into one of those situations where friendships were broken. Questions were left unanswered and no one quickly recovered. Memorable nights for the audience when the chaos appeared too genuine and unadulterated too. Following day. The repercussions were like wildfire, with fans closely examining each and every social media, along with all of the characters, words, and details of the dramatic supper. Numerous stories had already been told about it, and some of the recordings had been slowed down, zoomed in on, and seen hundreds of times, frame by frame. They were analyzed as if they were court evidence, ours. Popular hashtags depicted Sierra as the victim, and Mendeecees as the ultimate victim dispute, with some arguing that Yandy's timing was unfair, and that disclosing cost kind of public show was just as damaging. Sierra herself had said nothing while the internet was in a frenzy. She didn't post, phone, or answer messages. Instead, her silence only helped Toto increase the rumors. Fans wondered if she remained with him. Conversations turned from whispers to heated arguments. But the disruption had, though, Sierra had found a home with her sister. Things had only gotten worse behind closed doors. But she couldn't get rid of the tidal wave of emotions. So she sat on the couch with her sister by her side. Relived the night over and over again. Her sister shook her head and hugged her, whispering, "You trusted him with the very thing. He not only betrayed you, but he also betrayed the trust of our family. In what way could he have hurt me like this?" As she asked, she started crying. Despite his calls, texts, and Sierra once went to her sister's house where she urged her to tell him to keep away since she didn't want to see him. Proceed. I'd rather not hear anymore. Mendez desperately tried to make reasons will reduce the damage in the interim. Is there anything more harmful than lying? Something so important? What might go wrong? However, Mendeecees had no intention of giving up. He paced back and forth in desperation as he screamed and confided in a close friend. She doesn't understand. I didn't mean to harm her, the friend asked him, confused. Everyone was captivated by the tension and anxiously anticipated what I was doing to shield her from something worse. The next episode. Yet this ambiguity just added to its intrigue. What more was he hiding? Fans went wild with speculation. Stories about anything from financial difficulties to betrayals in the family to even more deadly secrets. In response to a question about whether she regretted telling him during dinner, Yandy told a friend that occasionally the most repulsive means of exposing the truth are needed. Her combat. Not everyone was convinced by his reasoning since he would have kept dragging her along endlessly if no one had stepped in. Some said she was making things up to fit herself as friends tried to get everyone together for a get-together talk after a few days. The chaos led to a group meeting. The atmosphere was depressing from the start, and Sierra folded her arms as she sat avoiding eye contact with the indies. But he was eager to voice his thoughts despite he sat across from her looking worn out. I owe you the first thing, he said. Truth. His voice was softer than usual. I ought to have told you myself before things got this bad. Sierra gave a sour laugh. You think that acknowledging it now would alter anything? She shot back. I can't take that away. You've made me look awful in front of everyone. The noise level in the room rose as friends joined in. Sierra was backed by one dot, saying that she doesn't deserve this catastrophe. Another made an effort to settle the dispute by Sue.